incident was about to take place that would shake the foundations of the civilized world.
It is time to open your mind. Time to discover your divine self as we navigate this holographic matrix together. Strap in, Cosmic Family, as we slide through this wormhole of cosmic information together in search of the truth.
You can't handle the truth.
It's time to go inside the matrix. With your host, Jimmy Brent.
All right, welcome everybody to Inside the Matrix. In this time of craziness in our world, it's pretty much unprecedented in my lifetime. Anyway, but it's fascinating, interesting that a lot of potential greatness could come out of this. Maybe we'll see. But anyway, my guest today is James True. James earned his bachelor degree in philosophy and religion while serving in the U.S. Navy as a submarine hunter. Later, he worked as an art director in the newspaper business and published a syndicated cartoon strip. He's a self-taught software engineer producing solutions for Autodesk, Cisco, Cure Autism Now, EMC, Stanford University, Sun Microsystems, VMware, and the Weather Channel. Some of his code has been mentioned in Wired magazine, and he co-authored a technical manual for video streaming servers. He has launched several software products over the years while pursuing commissions in outdoor sculpture. He served as education coordinator and later president of a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to wildlife rehabilitation. James is the chairperson for his county Libertarian Party, but his heart is in bioregionalism. I'll have to ask you about that. He's a prolific author, and his first book was released in October of 2018, entitled The Spell of Six Dragons. His second book, Blueprints of Mind Control, came out in February of 2019. His third book, The Technology of Belief, was released in the fall of 2019. James, welcome to the show.
It's really a pleasure to be here, Jimmy. Been looking forward to this for a while.
Yeah, me too. And I've heard you on many shows before, and I have the highest regard and respect for you. And you're a thought leader in the alt media realm, and it's so nice to have somebody who's really has such a diverse background as you and can share your thoughts with us. It's pretty amazing, a lot of the stuff you've been into. You're like a Renaissance man here.
Well, yeah, when I hear you read it, I'm like, wow, that's a lot of different stuff. But to me, I'm always in the pocket. And in my mind, I've always been focused on the same things, which is just a testament of creativity. There's something about the creative trance that you enter into in your mind that it's just my favorite place to be. You ask someone what makes you happy, and a lot of people might say, a beautiful beach with some calamari and a pina colada. And mine is that moment where you have an idea, but you can't say it yet because someone else gave you an idea, and you can't wait to tell them. And you have this feeling of, that feeling is what drives my entire life. That feeling of that discovery, of that sense of discovering something or making that connection that just seems to make everything click, where the neuron fires for the very first time. Like the very first time you learn that skill, there's a neuron firing. It's almost like a virginity has kind of been broken inside of you. And what I love about that moment is being there, being present, and almost being like it's doula, like it's like you're helping it to have birth. If I could be anywhere in the world, it would be in that transition at all times.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I've always said many times in the show that the arts is what humans do best, and creativity of all kinds, and that encompasses healing arts. It encompasses all the regular arts that we're used to, from music to sculpture to you name it. That creativity is really what humans do best. And being in that zone of creativity is just such a wonderful thing. I know myself, if I'm in the middle of writing a song, I could literally spend 8 to 10 hours here in my studio and look up and not realize it at all, because it becomes timeless at that point, and it's a wonderful space to be in.
Well, that's the beauty of it. I think when you're in that creative space, you start to realize you're actually understanding what time truly is, which is an illusion.
Yeah.
Because you're in that alchemical trance state. Because everything that we do 24/7, every moment of our lives, we are in a trance. There's nothing we can do to avoid that. I don't think we should avoid that. What we need to do right now is understand how those trances work, and more importantly, understand that there is a transmission inside your body. Your adrenals are a transmission gear shift, and you can change that trance at will. And most of us are taught to live on automatic transmission, where the trance state that's given to us, say by a cue or by a story or by something that happened to us at work or by something our boss said, or by a woman making us feel good from kissing us, or really all kinds of things, that those trance states end up being set in our mind where we set the gear, and then it's just kind of forgotten. And you wake up 4 years later and you've been in the same trance for 4 years, but you really just don't understand that this whole time you've had a transmission. So I think that's part of what we're lacking right now. That's part of what we are intentionally gelded in a way psychically, to where we're not going to understand. Well, wait a minute, what's this thing? Well, that's a gear shift, Jimmy. Well, what happens if I do the? And then you slowly start to learn. You slowly start to realize, hey, I can get around here. I can be kind of zippy if I get this right. So, that's really what we're all here to do, and we're doing everything we can to try and spread the word.
Yeah, your point is well taken, and I totally agree that too many people are on what I call autopilot. It's the programming. Unfortunately, that's one of the really big weaknesses of humans. That just like computers, they can be totally programmed. So our environment that we live in, culturally, societal, religious, political, everything, all those different influences in our world, friends and family, they all put us on sort of an autopilot if we're not aware of it. So one of the things that I've always found that we should strive for as human beings is to know who we are without all that stuff, and then be totally aware of all of the outside influences that are trying to steer us in a certain direction or a certain thought process that is not beneficial to us, but to some other thing or group,
Absolutely. In fact, I've noticed since the last year or two where I've developed the ability to work the transmission in my state, that I don't even care if someone's on the left or right. I just want them engaged. I just want them to know that their left pedal is the clutch, and that's a living thing. You can actually push that button in whenever you want. And I've noticed that as long as I find people that are engaging that clutch, that I can have someone who's like super liberal, who really just believes in, say, the power of bureaucracy, which personally drives me nuts. But it's like, the point is that I can still be with someone who still believes in that and fully understand and trust him even to drive his car, because I understand this is his vista. He's coming up this mountain from the west. He hasn't seen what I've seen on the east, and he needs to get there. Not everyone has an experience in the military like I did, where you literally see the drippings of the machine as it falls off people's brow, where you really see the evacuation that is installed in people. Because when you take someone in the military, what you're really doing is you're establishing a trance state. And it's not just the military, by the way. People are going to think this is just the military, but you're really, really missing the truth of all this. The military is just a little bit more blatant, so it's a better example that I can explain this to you.
Sure. Yep.
But when you enter the military, the first thing they do, the very, very first thing they do, is they take everything that you brought with you, and they say, you are not these things. You are not these cigarettes that you tried to smuggle in. You are not these tennis shoes. You are not this shirt that you are wearing. None of those things are you anymore. And then you're like, oh, okay. And then the next thing they do is they cut your hair, and they say, you are not your hair. You are not your decision for your hair. You are none of those things. You are not that. And then you start to kind of shrink inside yourself, because you're like, whoa, well, I'm not my hair. And then something beautiful happens. You start to find out that you are not your weakness, because boot camp is pulling that weakness out of you too. Boot camp is a very therapeutic thing. It's what happens after boot camp where the real kind of bad stuff happens. But the entire time through boot camp, they're shedding all of these layers of your identity. And they have to shed those. If they don't shed those, they cannot install a new trance state. And that's exactly the purpose. This is why it's done the way it is. This is why it takes 8 weeks. As you build through that, they actually take away your name. Sometimes in the military, you're actually given your last 4 of your social. That's put on your shirt. That's who you are. You might be lucky like me. I had my name on my shirt. Our company had their names on it. It just depends on which branch and whatnot. But it's part of that same gelding process of saying, look, all of these safety nets that you built around you through your identity need to be taken away now, because I need to install something else. And it's that next thing that really, really does the most damage, because the bureaucracy is then installed. And when a bureaucracy is installed, what people don't realize is that what you're doing is you're believing that the majority is greater than you. You believe that this imaginary person that you cannot even touch, you can't even complain to it, has more authority, rights, responsibilities, and a better moral compass than you do. That when that happens and you believe that, that really is the last of your identity completely shredding away in the wind, because you have surrendered to the zeitgeist or the groupthink. You have surrendered to the hive itself. In this case, it's the military. But if you look at an academia, you'll find that if anyone wants to become a doctor, they're entering a same kind of boot camp.
Exactly.
You're having to shed all of these identity factors, and you're having to prove that there is zero weakness in you. And what you're really doing by that is you're saying, I'm willing to surrender and give up everything it is about me. I just want you to to make me whole again. And of course, you come out of that hole. You are now living on a pedestal. Think about what a veteran goes through. No matter what you did in Iraq, I know veterans that were forced to set oil fields on fire. I know some veterans that were shooting the heads off camels to pass the time. I know veterans that were purposely destroying villages under the idea of following their orders and being patriotic. No matter what kind of evil you were asked to do, when you come home, there are 1 million people giving you blind empathy and telling you thank you. They are holding you up on a pedestal for performing that action. So you are constantly rewarded by the outside, from the outside, not from the inside, right? You're rewarded from the outside for what you do. This is called dopamine farming. It's literally causing dopamine to flow inside yourself from an external source. And as you start to stew in the guilt of what it is you actually did, or that's even assuming you still even have your foot on the clutch and you know what it is, you start to notice that you're going to be doing much better financially, physically, spiritually, and emotionally if you take your foot off that clutch and never ever try and touch it again. In fact, if you can convince yourself that you don't even have control over the wheel, you'll become a really good soldier. You'll become a really good vaccine expert. You'll become a really good police officer. And none of these are bad people, but the positions themselves have this kind of danger to it, where you end up evacuating to that tribal hive mind, to that system that's in place instead. And that's what ends up happening, where it chews us alive. And the older you get in that system, the harder it is for you to turn around and recognize a younger person, a junior who's coming up, who's trying to fight it. In fact, you find it threatening, because if he was to win, it would make you just a really, really bad person. Yeah. Like if you could really, really look at what you did, most people aren't going to really be willing to face that, you know? So instead, It's better just to maintain that trance state and fight it for all it's worth.
Boy, exactly. Everything you said there is just spot on. And we see it over and over and over again. And then the really tragic problem happens when that outside support, or false support that a lot of veterans experience, when that's not enough anymore and the inner conscience kicks in, it's just tragic, because you see all these veterans committing suicide because they realize what they did was wrong, and that they were duped into this, thought process and this justification process, which enabled them to, carry out orders which not only go against humanity, but go against their own soul, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's tragic, and my heart goes out to these men and women, veterans, and the ones that are active, the ones that are not active anymore, because I think 99.9% of them have the best of intentions and the highest of ideals of wanting to serve their country and do something great. But unfortunately, the entities that they are serving and the ones that are giving them orders have a completely different agenda, which they will never tell them about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, they can't, because you're in a secret society in plain view. Government itself is a secret society, much like the mafia.
Yeah, exactly. It's organized crime.
Yeah. In the mafia, there's something called muerto, which means I will never tell on you. In the government, we have something called classified information, which means I will never tell on you.
And national security.
Yeah. So plus you have, what did the mafia tell every single store owner through Brooklyn? Peace is the prize. Peace is the prize.
Peace
and what
protection.
Are we telling everyone in the Middle East? Peace is the prize.
Oh,
Peace
as we destroy your country.
Meanwhile, since World War II, every 15 months since World War II, America has bombed, invaded, or destroyed a foreign nation. That's not an exaggeration. You guys can look that up. That's how much it happens. And because it's such a slow footstep, you need to imagine that what the Leviathan is, what America is a giant Leviathan, almost like a brontosaurus. And I need you to picture that as you're watching a brontosaurus walk, say you're right there on the ground, when one foot hits, there's going to be a pause. There's going to be a nice pause because you're waiting for the next foot to drop. And that pause is just long enough where you're able to sort of forget what just happened because you're still trying to soothe. So it turns you into this psychotic trance mode of Stockholm syndrome. You're literally in a physiological state of limbic shock, but it's transmuted through your entire life. So that's why JFK was killed in daylight. JFK wasn't killed at night. He needed to be killed in broad daylight in a sunny day on a grassy knoll. It had to be exactly in your face. This is why school shooting psyops are done. This gives you enough of a tinge, enough of a spike in that drink to set the Stockholm in place. And so you end up with a nation that was already in shock from JFK, that then grows into shock over Vietnam, Korea. All of our skirmishes are just simply aftershocks, but we still don't recover. And then something terrible happens. All of those people in shock have kids. And then those kids are born in the normalcy of Stockholm, which means their gyro's normal point, their Polaris is shock. That's their frickin' Polaris is shock. And then something even worse happens. Those kids have kids. And then you end up with people that are content and happy inside of this system.
Yeah, and that's what a tragedy that is, and that it's become, because I think the vast majority of people are good-hearted, good-intended, but we have all these outside programming sources, trance-inducing sources, who are constantly manipulating the mass consciousness through these false flag events. Like, 9/11 was the booster shot, after JFK, to make sure that we're all going to stay in that absolutely broken state, that broken psyche state. And of course, it's been almost nonstop false flags since then, just to keep that going. And that's the method.
And no one stopped them. It's been extremely profitable. It's during a tragedy, if people do it, it's called looting. But if government does it, it's called a pillage. And 9/11 was a pillage. And the key to you guys need to understand that a pillage is not anarchy. It's not like, actually, I don't even like shaming anarchy like that because anarchy is a cool word. But pillage is not like a mismatch of crazy. It's actually not. It's a well-planned group rape. The idea is, hey guys, if all of us go into Rock Ridge at exactly the same time, we can do whatever the hell we want. We have to all go in at the same time. And so there's a safety net inside of a pillage. It's a tactical strategy.
It's the gang.
And that shows you guys, I wish people could see this. That really gives you the absolute proof that psychopaths run the world. Because do you understand how hard it is to get psychopaths to cooperate? The reason why we have blackmail is because it's a tool of cooperation for psychopaths. Psychopaths can't trust each other. Right. They have to have a mutual form of destruction before they can sit down at a table and negotiate.
Yep.
So if they're out there able to pillage something as large as 9/11, it shows you something very, very, very clear, people. Countries are not what we think they are. I know it looks that way, but when you go into a professional wrestling match, I swear to you, it's going to look just like Dastardly Dastardo, the black sand flea of the Middle East versus white American mailman, the golden child of America. You're going to watch that match and you are not going to ever see the promoter. You're not going to see the dude that sold the tickets, and you're going to be sold the entire time. Well, no, Jimmy, he hit him on the back with a chair. Of course he hates him. What are you, nuts?
But you didn't see him talking in the dressing room before they went out.
Or after. And that's why when you see that picture of George Bush, embracing Michelle Obama, you really have to understand, guys. You really have to understand that. We know what's happened. So imagine yourself as president. And you've been told, you're the leader of the free world, and you've been told, yeah, there's this funeral for McCain, so we want you to sit you next to George Bush. And imagine if you were the good guy and someone did that. History's watching. You would use whatever power that you needed to not sit by that guy. You would say, no, it's too important for what's happening in history. There's no way I can go in there and sit by him. There's no strategy to it. There's no winning. All it does is cause more dissonance. But it doesn't happen that way because it's a club. And it has to be a club. It wouldn't function without it being that way. America's too powerful for them to let the Electoral College just choose someone at random. That's the craziest idea you've ever heard. No one would put that much effort into building this government and shooting JFK and then going, yeah, let's leave Electoral College alone. We need to have some dignity here. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, mass craziness, and we're seeing an even heavier dose of it currently. So we're coming up against the break here, but when we come back, I want to kind of get into sort of current events and the whole mind control psyop that's occurring right now, and so people have a better idea.
Before the break, I want people to know I do believe in government. I have an idea. It's called unanimous government. And if we get a chance, I want to talk to it. I just don't want people to think that this is me just saying we can't have government. We can, but you have to do it right. Anyway, thanks for letting me slip that in.
Absolutely. Okay, everybody, we're going to take a short pause. You're listening to Inside the Matrix with our special guest, James True. We'll be right back. Stick around with us. Okay, welcome back, everybody, to the second segment of our show today. We see an unprecedented, crazy world out there right now. And in my estimation, it seems like there's two conflicting timelines that are kind of jockeying for position here. One would be, the totalitarian globalist New World Order exerting their authority and further reminding the people that they are just, slaves to be controlled. And then on the other hand, we had this narrative that says the patriots out there, the white hats, the good guys, are going to arrest all the big criminals and restore freedom and financial stability and wonderfulness. So I'm rooting for the last one, but we're still in the middle of it, and it's pretty unclear exactly what's happening. What do you think, James?
I think that no matter what happens to you, if you experience something horrible, you have two systems at work inside of you. One of those is, it's actually three, but I'll keep it simple. One of those is your limbic system. It's your reptilian brain. And it's going to react first. It's going to be about a quarter of a second ahead of your second system, the neocortex, your mammalian brain. That limbic system is going to kick right in and go, holy cow, there's danger. Here's some adrenaline. And we are taught that fear is a bad thing. But fear is actually adrenalized power that's been granted to you by your engineering department. Your Scotty in your body has said, dude, I don't like the looks of it down here. Here's full warp power, man. Here you go. You know, all you got to do is hit go. Here's all the energy you could possibly need. The warp core is hot, my friend. And we are taught to look at that and go, oh my God, I'm terrible. Or, oh, I gotta get rid of this power fast. It's this fear is, I have to transmute fear and turn it into love. So you're asking Captain Kirk to somehow take all of that energy in the phasers of your main battle guns and turn it into love. And you're just like, are you sure that's what I need to do? When instead Scotty's saying the whole time, dude, this is dangerous. That's a big Klingon, big Klingon. And you're told the exact opposite. So you have these two different systems at play. Now, society only has access to the outer system. It only has access to your mammalian brain. Now, some of you guys are going to think, and I want you to, because some of you guys have heard about this word reptilians, and you've heard that we have this hatred in our psyche for reptiles, for reptilians, for all things limbic. We are afraid of the snake. We have an entire world religion based on the betrayal by a frickin' snake. We have stories of Apollo who goes to Delphi and defeats the Pythos, the Gaia, the python of the earth. We have Quetzalcoatl in America, where you have an eagle that lands on an island to bite the head off a snake. What you're seeing is, so it's as above, so below. If you want to have power in this world, you're going to find resonance. Just like you would pluck a string on the guitar and then pluck the sixth fret. You're basically hitting harmonics. And if you can hit harmonics on everything, you're going to find more power in that. So when you're looking at not just a human, but a society as a whole, what you have to do is go after their neocortex. You're not going to be able to get deep into their brain, into that reptilian center. You can only attack it from the outer sides. And that's what shame is, and that's what fame is. Okay? Those are the two towers of mind control. This is the Jachin and the Boaz of Masonic legends, the two towers. Yep. The first tower is that you're a terrible person, that I'm here to destroy you. You're a pissant of the earth. This is literally the same harmonic of the Old Testament. It's the idea that no matter what you do, I am here to destroy you. I am a vengeful, angry, jealous force, and all you can do is tremble and offer me the tip of your penis and your first son. It's that kind of like, it's a very, very bad fear. And then you have the second tower, which is pure mercy, complete surrender. And what that does to the mind is it creates two catapults, two polarities, and you get stuck in between. The electromagnetic attraction of you being stuck in between those things makes it impossible for you to look at anything outside of that. And you actually end up with almost like a dowsing rod where you're finding water, where you can literally steer someone anywhere around the world you want, like a leash, by harboring fame and shame. Fame and shame, and you keep them right in between those goalposts. You have to be careful. You can't do it too much jerkingly. In fact, most of our psyops are actually not brutal on purpose, because shock, or I should say, they're not necessarily supposed to be as painful as they're supposed to be shocking. because you can enter into shock but not feel pain. Pain is actually something that kind of wakes you up. Shock actually will do something quite different. So the goal of these two towers is to constantly shock you. And the way to do that is by gaslighting. Some of you have had the unfortunate experience of being in a relationship with these two towers, but you never knew it was two towers. What you saw was someone that you loved or care about that was constantly one day just really, really loving you and telling you how great you were. And then within 3 seconds later, they're really, really just so hateful of you and what you've done. And they don't understand this because of epigenetic programming, but they're actually trauma programming you the exact same way they were trauma programmed. And the way to do that is to gaslight somebody. It becomes a trance state where if it's done to you enough, you become either a masochist or a sadist. And all a masochist or a sadist is someone that has a fetish for one of those poles, for one of those polarities. So it's always in keeping inside of those two poles. And that really is the entire secret of mind control, is understanding how to work those poles on somebody and how to keep somebody in between them.
Yeah, that's so interesting when you say that, because we see that polarity all the time. So all of these so-called movers and shakers, the politicians, the Hollywood people, the sports figures, we see them bouncing back and forth from those two polarities because they got the fame on one hand, they're all powerful, the whole world loves them, or at least they have their attention, and they're just totally ego tripping on all that. But then at the same time, they also know that there's a videotape somewhere of them doing something really nefarious that could come out at any given moment in time.
Yep. And that's the casting couch.
Yeah.
That's literally the definition of the casting couch. And if anyone's listening to this that thinks, well, that doesn't happen a lot, you're seriously not paying attention. This is like documented. It's not like it happens here, it happens there.
It's an SOP.
Yeah. The people on top are only on top because they were willing to do more than everyone else below them. Guys, there's no exception to this. Look at what was Steven Spielberg's first film. I probably shouldn't even talk about it. It was so kind of bad. But if you look at his first film, he was basically presenting himself as, I'm willing to do anything, and I mean anything, to get this job. And if you are a trauma programmer, if you are someone who has subconsciously been trauma programmed, you look for these people.
Absolutely.
You need these people for one reason. This is really important. All of us are not friends with people because they're nice. I know it feels that way, but it's not true. You are actually friends with the people in your life because they are predictable. When you are around people that are predictable, your reptilian saves millions of calories every millisecond. It doesn't have to, because you're not novel, because you're not presenting a novelty to it, you're acting in the standard operating procedure, it feels a sense of calm from you being in the environment. And as long you can be in the environment and spewing cuss words all the time, as long as you always do it, you're going to have friends. You're going to develop an association with people. And we know this because you hear people say, oh, he's such a curmudgeon, but I love him. What they're really saying is, this guy's been rock steady predictable for 17 years, and he saves me calories. And there's nothing wrong with that, guys. I mean, this is how the world works. The world requires a bazillion calories, and you've only got a mazillion. And so you're going to have to cut corners where you can. This is how the system works.
Yeah, and you see these people in the club, I call them in the club out there all the time. And, everybody's mind controlled to some point or another. It's just the interesting part of it is how aware you are of it. And that should be everybody's goal, to become aware of all that stuff. But the most controlled, the most mind controlled and damaged people out there are the ones that are the most famous, the ones that are the most well known. They are the the pets or whatever, or the ones on a leash of the parasite class who is above them.
And they're a commodity.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, we see this all the time. And it's just fascinating to me that it just, people, we always talk about being, controlled and all this kind of stuff, but these are the worst of the worst out there. And psychopathy, like you said, looks for other psychopathic people to put, to assist them to maintain their game, to maintain their system. And if they see a guy that's up and coming CEO of some corporation and they see that he's completely ruthless, let's say he's a guy comes in and buys up companies and fires everybody, sells all the assets, completely destroys everything in his path. That's their guy. It's like, oh yeah, this is the guy we want. We're going to take him. We're going to groom him for even bigger and better things. And that's the way the system has worked up until this point.
Yeah,
we're seeing it.
Sorry, go ahead.
We're seeing evidence of it all the time, over and over again. Psychopathy rewards psychopathy, and unless it, we can find the ability to stand up to that, unless we can get enough people in the world to say, "Oh hell no, we ain't taking this, this bullshit anymore." This is not serving humanity. This is serving a small group of psychopaths and parasites feeding off the rest of us.
Mm-hmm. It's when people have trouble understanding, well, why would Tom Hanks be a slave to someone else? I mean, he has all the money in the world. He could do what he wants. And you have to understand that, picture the Kentucky Derby. The winner of the Kentucky Derby, let's say it's Black Beauty. I don't know horses, but let's just say Black Beauty won the Kentucky Derby. Imagine that you're the fastest horse in the world and you really, really want to get into horse racing. Can you do it without a human? Like could you go register yourself at the Kentucky Derby? I'm a walk-on. Yeah. I need a rider? Well, damn. Let me go hire a rider, and then it's like, yeah, I'm looking to hire a rider. I just need you to sit on my back and shut up. Yeah. Oh, you need pay? What do you mean pay? You need money? Oh, shit. I don't have thumbs. How do I give you money? It's not going to work, okay? This is what Hollywood is. So what the Tom Hanks horse does, what the Black Beauty horse does, is that they have to be found. So they have to present themselves to someone who could let them in the door. Because you're not going to win the race. It doesn't matter how fast you are. You're not going to win the race unless someone signs you up and puts you in and gives you a rider. It's the only way it's going to work. Mm-hmm. And now I want you to imagine that if you are going to sign a horse, you may see that Black Beauty is the fastest horse in the world, but she's not predictable. I don't want to invest in this horse. I'd rather have a horse that's not as fast, but would still win. That's what I'd rather have.
Or would lose when I tell them to.
Sure, exactly. Now, let's say that Black Beauty made it into the big league somehow. Magically, they made it in. You're picturing this wild horse that then has wildness still, when in fact their entire day is filled with, the moment they get up, someone comes in and shaves their balls. Then someone else comes in later and they shines their hoofs and they removes the burrs. Someone comes in and cuts their hair. They brush them out. And then let's say that you want to go out and play in the mud. Well, the second you want to play in the mud, you're like, oh, fuck, they're going to shave my balls again. They're going to have to scrub that. They're going to have to do this. And then they're probably not even going to let me play in the mud. They're probably going to have a fence up. You start to understand that people are commodities, just like race cars, just like horses. Why would you not think that humans would be a commodity too? I mean, right now, as we're speaking, there's over 7 million people living in slavery somewhere around the world that we acknowledge. It's not out of the ordinary to consider that human slavery is happening right now and that it would not be something that's elite. And when you look at the painting of Bill Clinton in the Monica Lewinsky dress that was found in the Epstein Island. This is a painting. If you guys haven't seen it, it's just a painting of it.
Yep.
He's laying in the Monica Lewinsky dress with this cute smile. And he's looking at the camera, the painter. That painting is a mortgage title. It's a deed, okay? It's a deed of ownership. Now you're like, well, how does that work, James? Well, here's how it works. There's a living photograph, a real photograph or video probably of Bill Clinton in that dress. Okay. And that photograph is the title to Bill Clinton. But the second you show that photograph, what happens to your property? It disappears. It no longer has value anymore, right? Because it's been spent. You spent that title because you exposed it.
Shame polarity.
Yeah. How do you show ownership of something? How do you sell a human if you're a billionaire? You know, millionaires collect money. Billionaires collect people. And when you collect people, they're going to come with a title. And that title is a big ass fancy painting that's as big as day. It's right in your face. It's what I call blatant camouflage. And most of the world works this way through blatant camouflage. It's just so in your face, you never see it. It's just that big. It's such a perfect way to hide. In fact, the great horned owl is the animal that's known for its best eyesight. But I can grab an owl's beak. I've done this. And it doesn't know what hit it. Why? Because it can't see 3 inches in front of its face. It can see 2 miles away, but it can't see what's right in front of its face. It doesn't have the ability to perceive that. And that same blatant camouflage is what happens to us. So when we see that painting of Bill Clinton, we think, well, it's just a weird anomaly. But no, it's a living deed. It's something that's traded on the open market. And all of our elites have these deeds on them in some way or another. Unless you're like an elite, and by then it's probably programmed into your blood. Because just like I had mentioned to you about how the Stockholm Syndrome people then have children and then those children have children, the elites are the same way. Gloria Vanderbilt is a perfect example. If you look at her art, you're going to see this potpourri mismatch of, oh my God, please don't give me a solid color to rest on. It's just this complete disassociation. From blip, 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 blip. She has to keep her mind moving 24/7. She's like a shark in the water that has to keep moving to live. Like she can't just sit still. You end up with people that are born into this trance state. They're born into second gear going 70 miles an hour. And they just don't know anything else. And that makes them predictable. It makes them so predictable that you could give that person $400 million and they would exactly do what you expected them to do with it. They are pawns in that game. And you would never, ever, ever want an elite who wasn't your pawn. You would never want them to have that much money as, say, a Rockefeller. And that's why when you look at the history of Rockefeller, you see this consistent hidden hand that keeps coming into that family and giving them more and more money and more breaks. And it's because that family is a programmable elite altar established 1,000 years ago in that lineage. And they're so predictable that they're used. It's a lot like we would buy an old MG and fix it up and drive it around. Billionaires are driving people around like that in the same way. But they only like the cars that are predictable. They're only going to get in the cars that they know how to work and will always perform as expected.
Yeah, that's such a great way to put it. It really paints a clear picture in the mind of exactly the way, their systems work. So what's your take currently, on the situation? We're in a semi-lockdown situation, which we've never, ever been in before. How do you see this going?
I believe the situation is dire. I will tell the listeners that I'm in a trance state just like all of you are. And it could be that maybe I'm in the wrong transmission for this, but I do not like what I see at all. I don't like it at all. It's exactly what I keep thinking was going to happen. That's what makes it worse, is that I don't even get the joy of saying I told you so. It's more like, oh, I told you so. It's like that. Like there's no happiness.
There's no joy in that. Yeah.
It sucks. And so I'm watching the exact same things that should be happening if what I'm seeing is happening, exactly happening. And so what you're looking at is a combination of 5G and a combination of lockdown, hiding behind this COVID virus. In fact, I call the COVID virus the adjuvant. A vaccine has an adjuvant. An adjuvant's
Right.
meant to tell the body, "Oh my God, I'm freaking out! I'm freaking out! Help!
Like
Help! Help!"
aluminum,
That's what an adjuvant
yeah.
does. COVID is the adjuvant. The virus, or the vaccine that's hiding that adjuvant, is the stimulus that comes after it. The stimulus is the poison. COVID-19 is simply the adjuvant to kick the whole thing off. And what happened is Trump crashed the economy so he could sell all of our birth certificates. Literally, the entire world was sold for $5 trillion thanks to a coupon called COVID-19. It's like a freaking Groupon that the psychopaths entered into their browser checkout, and that they were able to buy the entire world for $5 trillion. And that's what you're seeing happening right now. And because that's going to happen, that's why this is an economic collapse on purpose. Trump is putting his knee into our neck so we can't breathe. And he's doing that so he can look at us in the eye and say, "Peace is the prize. Peace is the prize. I'm going to give you some air. Would you like me to rescue you and give you some air?" And you're going to want it. You're going to take the stimulus. You're going to love the stimulus. And your grandkids are never going to be the same because of it. But we're going to love it. And that's how it's going to work.
It's shock and awe, baby. Yep. All over again.
We can fix it, by the way. I know we're going to break, but we can fix it. So don't hear me as all negative. I'm just telling you what's on the field. That's all.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to take a short pause right here in just a couple seconds. And I'd like to ask anybody who has a question or something you want to bring up or talk about with us, post your question in the chat or call in. We'd be happy to address those questions. We're going to take a short pause right here. You're listening to Inside the Matrix with our special guest, James True. And when we come back, we'll be talking about some possible solutions, and maybe there's a way out of all this craziness. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back, everybody, once again to our third segment of the show with our special guest, James True. And before the break, we were talking about, we're in a somewhat, I guess precarious is a nice way to put it, but in a deeper sense, it seems a lot worse than that. But there are possibilities. There are possible solutions. James, you want to take that ball and run with it a little bit?
Sure, yeah. I guess I should first start and just say real quick that I almost fell for the virus idea, that it was a virus. But what kept tripping me up was we're telling everyone that this virus came from a plane in Wuhan, China. And therefore, no one can leave their house in California. But during this entire time, all those planes are still in the air. The planes are still flying. So if the plane is truly the cause of the virus, if this was true, those planes would have been shut down first. In fact, I would argue that it would be 1.75% easier to shut down air traffic than it would be to shut down the entire economy. I remind everyone that on 9/11, we were actually able to shut down all the planes, even though it conveniently started after the attack. But the fact is that this is something that's possible. That this isn't something that's impossible.
Right.
No one can look at you and say, "Well, that's ridiculous, James. There's no way they could shut down all those." Yes, there is. The entire world was shut down with words, as Richie from Boston says. The entire world was shut down with words. And that shows you just the pure raw power of this pyramid scheme that we have in place. Now, I realize we're looking for something positive right now because I want to convey that. But I think the first thing to being positive is fully grasping what the situation is. Because otherwise you might try and be positive by saying, well, maybe it's the virus, blah, 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 blah. And I really think that is your neocortex that's been trained to reject fear all the time. And because it's been trained to hate adrenaline, it's looking for excuses to never have it in its core, in its warp core. And so you really have to be careful of that. All that said, we know that a new dollar is coming. We know that on top of this pillage, so not only has there been $8 billion already lost the second COVID was announced, that the Trump immediately released that right away, That was the first round of payouts. In fact, the media is trying to distract us by showing us a couple of stories where people have been buying and selling stocks as early as January 24th after they had their meeting with Trump. You've got senators that were buying Citrix. I'm not talking about, buy 1,000 shares. They're literally dumping millions in dollars in stocks, losing a lot of money on other stocks to come in and buy Citrix, to come in and buy these work-at-home software companies, and to buy the 5G companies. If you're willing to accept the psychopaths there, you're willing to look at the footprints. And guys, when you can see the footprints, that's when you know what's coming and how it's going to get there. And what's coming is going to be a new dollar. And that new dollar is going to be painted in a very beautiful way. This is a plan that's been in place since 1988. You can look at the cover of The Economist for October. It even shows you the date when it happened. It's 10/10/2018 was when all this was decided. In fact, there was a massive stock market crash on that day. I hate to sound like I'm tooting my own horn, but it's just I knew that was happening, and I posted, I wrote about it, and I said, this is going to happen, and it did. And it's not because I'm some seer. It's not because I have magical powers. I don't have a crystal ball. I simply understand that psychopaths are real. I simply understand that there's a food chain, and man is not the top of the food chain, guys. Psychopaths are the top of the food chain. And if you understand your predator, you understand the risk. You understand where it's going to go. So what's going to happen next is we're going to have a blockchain dollar. Now, for years, I've been fighting for decentralized blockchain. I actually think it's a technology that could save us. But we're not going to get that. We're getting a centralized blockchain. Yep. The new dollar is going to be built off the XRP platform. XRP is one of many altcoins out there, but it has a central node point for all transactions.
Or control. Right?
Yes, exactly. And because it's centralized, you now have control. That XRP is going to be our new dollar. And you're going to get, I predict that you're going to get a dollar bill. It's going to have a picture of the man on the moon on it. I guarantee you it's right now, man on the moon. Jimmy Fallon is going to sing a song about the dollar, and he's going to tell you just how great it is. He's going to show you that with the new app, you can scan that dollar and turn it into digital bits. Maybe it'll be called Phoenix tokens or something. I don't know. But you'll turn your dollar into digital bits. So every printed dollar that you see now is basically still going to be printed, but it's going to work like a check. And the moment you scan that check, it's now a voided dollar. Now, in order to support this system, you're going to need a new infrastructure across the world to accommodate this new technology. And that new technology is going to be the blockchain. And that's basically what's going to secure all of the money into this centralized, computerized system. Additionally, they're going to claim that that dollar is backed by gold. But just as Bitcoin forks, some of you guys aren't going to know what that means, but as digital currency grows, it can be forked. That means that literally you can say we're going to now have twice as many dollars. So, I mean, you guys don't get an extra dollar. I'm just telling you there now.
Like a stock split, right?
Yeah, it's a stock split, but it's with digital.
Right.
The Fed, the new Fed, the Fed 2.0, is going to, they're going to say this is the safety, right? They're going to claim, well, no, in order to help the economy, we're going to have this option where we can split this. But we're going to split it in like micro amounts so it won't cause inflation. This is part of the voodoo, is that they're still telling us that inflation doesn't exist,
right? Which
is absolute bullshit. But anyway, that's going to enable them to do even more constriction, even more devaluation under our noses. It's basically a better version of the dollar for them. They're not going to have to put nearly as much work into it anymore. It's going to be something that runs itself automatically. And because the IMF is loaning all this money, you're setting up a global market where everyone's going to have to be on the same system. This is why we poisoned the previous president of Venezuela. I can't prove that, but Maduro says we did. And if you look at what we did to Honduras when Hillary Clinton was in office, we were actively shooting presidential candidates in the head. And we were using officers from retired mercenaries from Georgia that were going down there to fulfill these hits. And we did the same thing to Venezuela. We've been telling Venezuela that their president is illegitimate, and it's another form of constriction through economic sanctions. In fact, in the news, Venezuela's been begging for aid, but because them and Iran aren't cooperating, quote, quote, they're not getting the same kind of aid. And it just so happens that those are the last of the Mohicans, guys. Iran and Venezuela are the last of the Mohicans. Some of you are going to argue, well, James, Syria and North Korea are too, and that's fine. You can say that, but I don't think they are. I think those have already fallen. I just don't think we see it yet. When I say last of the Mohicans, these are the last two that have been rung in to the bank, to the World Bank. And that really does create the entire global control system of this mafia. Basically, nuclear countries, what you see is what you think of as being nuclear countries are really countries that are made. Like when you're in the mafia,
Right.
you could be in the mafia, but you're not made yet. You get made. That's what being a nuclear country is. You've stepped into that outer ring.
You're a made man country.
Yes, exactly. So you have a little bit more power to do things. You're still part of the blackmail, but you now have mutual destruction of evidence on other countries. You know something that the other countries is lying about too. You guys are mutually lying about something, and if people were to find out that you were lying, that would be your downfall. So it sort of creates this system in place. I would predict that blackmail is actually going to go away because it's just not needed anymore. In other words, the system's now set. All the calves are looped to the same feeder now, and it's just not going to be as necessary in the future. That's going to look like peace in the Middle East. It's going to look like a golden age. It's going to look like a new era of prosperity. In fact, it will be written in the history books as the golden time, as the time when the world healed itself and the Middle East found peace. And just as you know, guys, if you look through history is graffiti. And the biggest spray can wins. That's all it fucking takes. Man. That's it. It doesn't take anything else but that. And what you're looking at right now is not going to be remembered. It's not. Your bones are the Dead Sea Scrolls to the real truth of what's happening here. And it's not going to be in the books. It's not going to be in Wikipedia. None of that stuff's going to be there. It's going to be looked at as the best of times ever. We're going to love this as it's brought in. And that's going to give our grandchildren this idea that, oh, I shouldn't be complaining. This is what we have now is great. You know, as they're literally trying to get on the bus and go, no, just like your car's expired from its catalytic converter inspection, your vaccine certificate has expired. Now, we can't make you take a shot. We're just simply saying you can't use public transportation. That's all. So, hey, if you don't want the shot, that's cool, man. Hey, we're a free country. We're a free country. Oh, yeah, post office? Yeah, you can't go in there. Okay. No, but you can still access the post office. We have this special service branch that's, it's 700,000 miles that way. Yeah. You'll find that there's a spot. And so anyone that doesn't get in the system is just going to be left out. You're simply just going to be left out, and you're going to wither and die unless you can find a way to change, to break your addiction to Babylon, to find a way to cut off your addictions to the information and to the zeitgeist itself. And right now is probably our best time to do that, because what's happening soon. So there's something called disassociation in the mind. When the mind starts to break, it disassociates from the body. It right. Physically leaves the body. What you're seeing with all these avatars online, where I'm not a pretty girl, so I will put on this filter that takes all the blemishes off my face and gives me deer antlers and makes my eyes bigger and gives me a button nose. Okay? I know that sounds harmless, and I'm not telling you guys to stop it. I'm just telling you this is literally what it is. That's disassociation. It's the first steps into the pool of disassociation. Now, right now, it's no problem. But when everyone's got VR helmets and you're logging in and you're turning into like a six-breasted, green sex goddess from the planet, Orgasm, but you're competing up against, moderately chested Betty, who's got really nice hips, but you never really notice because her features, what I'm saying. What I mean is that you're not going to be able to compete with this ultra human, this painted false image, this facade human. And it's going to cause everyone to eventually disassociate. This is on down the line, but eventually your normal state of being, you're going to be born into a state of disassociation. In fact, I would imagine that just as you have like a bar mitzvah ritual now, you will have an avatar ritual in the future. I'm not claiming that this is going to be a formal ceremony, but that people are going to develop and grow their avatar where it's going to actually become their new persona, their new body. And it's going to have upgrades. It's going to do things others can't. And that's the addiction I'm talking about, where most of us are going to wither and die without being inside of it. And when I say us, I'm really talking about our children and our children's children. Because just like the Brontosaurus, you got to take these slow steps. You got to do it slow. Because if you do it fast, you're going to make someone break out of the spell. They're gonna no longer look between your two towers anymore, are they? Because now they're like, well, wait a minute, I'm going over here. I'm just going a completely different direction. So it has to always be subtle. It has to always be inviting. It has to always have that element of, I forgive you. I forgive you for everything. I'm the most magnanimous person you could ever imagine. It always has to be that way. Just like the gaslighter. Just like, oh, he's my knight in shining armor who tortures the fuck out of me when I get home at night. That's what Zionism is. It's the gelding of your psyche from the time you're born to the time you die. That's what circumcision's all about. We circumcise the men in America. We circumcise the women in the Middle East. I'm using that as a blanket statement, but my point is that that's how you geld the psyche. You cut its genitals when it's young, and you look at it and you tell it, well, it's because you were dirty. That's all. No, I love you. I love you. I only had to do it because you're dirty. That's all. I just had to make sure you're going to be okay and that you weren't walking around being all nasty. Imagine your mother cutting skin off you when you're 13 or when you're 10, like when you're conscious. Imagine her cutting skin off your arm saying, I have to do this. Don't you understand? It's because I love you. I have to do this to you to cleanse you. I'm concerned about you, so I'm going to do this. You're creating that sadist or you're creating that masochist in all those rituals. That's what all of this programming is all about, is maintaining that same trance state of pure Stockholm syndrome, where you're sitting in the van, the kidnapper just shot your family, he's knocking off banks, he's literally shooting people in the head in front of you, and he buys you an Egg McMuffin. And you think he cares about you. You think he cares. And you develop a fantasy in your mind. But he said that all these are bad people, that these are actually other bank robbers that have infiltrated the bank and are working in there pretending to be employees, and that he didn't have any choice. He had to go in and shoot them because peace is the prize, because America's the best, because government is the answer to everything. That's the Stockholm syndrome, guys, and we have to break that trance. And the only way to break that trance is you're going to have to cut off your addiction to Babylon. You got to do it now. Man is the living soil. We have to put our feet back in the soil. We have to literally ground. The second you touch your bare feet in the ground, 1 billion electrons come rushing up from the ground into your feet. They fill your entire body. That's how much the earth understands and wants you. People think that we're not of this earth, but we are literally the soil's immune system. We are Gaia's helpers. We're the ones out there fighting all the bacteria. We're the ones that are supposed to be here defending the land. But we've been told that we're the evil curse, that we have this black carbon footprint, that we're walking on a white virgin beach and we're leaving black sticky oil everywhere we walk. We're told that we're the foreign invader, that we're this xenophobic, racist, sexist, toxic, masculine-y, genital-ridden mess that's here to make everything bad. And the earth is crying because she doesn't have us. The earth is trapped between this machine and us, where we've built this psychotic machine and we're literally paving over everything so we can keep the amnesia, so we can maintain that separation between the immune system and the body. We are the living earth. We are a function of it. We are part of the fractal. The earth wasn't made and then we were put here. That's like opening up a fractal on a computer and going, well, yeah, all this is here except for yellow. The color yellow was added later. by a strange person who really hated people but then loved them. It's all psycho mind control disassociation, and it's why we're so predictable. We got to snap out of that. The solution is fixing your ego and fixing your pride. I feel like I've been talking too much, Jenny, so I won't go into those, but I can.
No,
that's
great.
the key. The two keys to this are ego and pride. Ego is shamed every day. In fact, you're told that secretly you want to have sex with your mother, and that or secretly you want to have sex with your father, and that your ego is this evil creature that's living, and that you're walking around the world with your giant ego and you're fucking everything up. And it's literally the exact opposite. Ego is psychic gasoline. It's empathy in your tank, ready for any kind of challenge. When you have a full tank of gas, when you have a full tank, if someone attacks you, you're cool. You're like, no, it's cool, man. It's cool. If you imagine a lady trying to cross the street at an intersection, but she's kind of old and she's really slow, and you're running on empty, you're almost out of gas. Do you gun it to beat her, or do you wait through that grueling torture of wondering, am I going to run out of gas in the 17 minutes it's going to take her to cross the street? You're going to become selfish because you don't have enough ego. And as you complain, if you open your door and say, hi, I'm almost out of gas, can you please either hurry the fuck up or wait? People are going to tell you that you have too much ego, that because you're so egotistical, that's what makes you mean. And it's literally the exact opposite. You've shamed the crap out of your ego. You've told Scotty, hey, Scotty, all that warp drive you built up for the last 4 weeks in the core, I need you to dump it. And Scotty's like, well, why? We might need that. It's like, because it makes me bad. It makes the ship bad. It makes us terrible. And we have to run around on empty, because the ship who runs around with the least amount of gasoline wins the virtue pot. They win the virtual signaling grand prize. They're the ones that have been functioning through the most torture, and therefore they win, because we elevate those. We elevate the ones that flog their ego in public. We elevate you if you walk around literally through the street where you've taken off your shirt and you're beating yourself with a cat of nine tails going, oh, I'm racist. I'm the most white toxic male among you. And then someone else jumps up and starts cutting himself. Oh, yeah? I'm like 10 times more toxically masculine sexist than you are. And it's like, well, I'm going to cut my foot off. Well, that's how racist I am. And you end up with this contest to the bottom, this race to who can empty their ego the most. And that's why we keep cursing each other for it. We're cursing each other for ego because we're winning virtue. We're winning virtue in exchange for ego. And it pulls up something really important. We now have this hatred of the word pride. We love the word pride. We hate the word pride, and we love the word reputation. And pride is how you feel about yourself. Reputation is how others feel about you. And what we need is pride. We don't need reputation. What we need is people to reinvigorate their own pride, to say, I'm in charge of this car. I'm going to clean up all the dirty French fry trays, all the drink cups. They got to go, because the person who drives this car is worthy. I love that guy. He knows how to push the clutch. He knows how to roll down the window better than anybody. And I trust him more than anyone else in the entire world to drive this super powerful machine. The most amazing race car in the entire universe is the human body. Mm-hmm. But we're taught to wait for it's over, to hope for a better life in the afterlife, to treat this like a prison, to cut it, to shame it, to fill it with bad shit. We need to turn those words around, because we're living in inversion, ego and pride. That's what my books do. Blueprints of Mind Control repairs the ego. Technology of Belief sort of explains this idea of how plasma works, of how your life force works, and just why it's so important. It's liquid empathy. When you have ego is empathy, because you have enough gasoline where if you see someone else almost running out of gas, you can go, hey, I got plenty of gas, man. Here. In fact, I keep this extra tank just for this situation. They're going to be like, dude, that's so nice. You're like, it's not really that big of a deal. You know why? Because I got plenty of ego. I got it, man. Have a good one. Pay it forward. And you're off and on your way.
I love it. All right, James, once again, we're up against the break here. We just have a few seconds to go, but hold that thought. We're going to get into some more positive ways that we can encounter this world in just a little bit. So stick around with us on Inside the Matrix. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Inside the Matrix. Inside the Matrix with Jimmy Brent. Broadcasting to you live from the neon capital of the world.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to our final segment here on Inside the Matrix with James True. Now, James, we were going to get into some more positive aspects in the last segment, but you were on a roll, and it's totally information that we all need to be mindful of. But also, you know, there's a concept that you mentioned when I was reading your bio called bioregionalism. Explain what that means and why that's important, would you?
Yeah. So first of all, it doesn't have to be called bioregionalism. It doesn't have to be. I believe that words belong to us, and if people don't like that word, that's fine. But here's the concept. All it is decentralized government. It is a safety mechanism. When I was in the Navy, our biggest concern, at least on a surface ship, was what happens if we get struck by a torpedo? It's a very dangerous thing because you're living, you're out on the water. It could sink the whole boat. The solution to that is to compartmentalize the ship. Every single bulkhead is rated to basically as an outdoor, barrier from the water. And because of that, every door is sealable, airtight, and you have a system in place where if a torpedo was to hit, you would not lose the entire ship. You would only lose a portion of it. This is what decentralization is. That's all it really means. It's to decentralize the government. What we have is a pyramid scheme. We have a Plinko set, like on Price is Right, where we take our taxes and we dump it into this top bin. And then through the bin, all the psychopaths that are on top get to eat whatever they want. And then all these chinks, hit like plink, 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 plink. They fall through this machine and they come down at the very, very bottom. Yeah. And then that chump change we get. Our regionalism is percolation. It's percolated resources. What that means is percolated is when you have water, you're not waiting for it to rain from someone who's giving you water. You have water that comes up from the ground. It rises from the roots. The grass itself is the waterer. We are the grass, man. All of us are just happy blades of grass. We are the leaves of grass out there doing our thing. And we should be able to percolate what is an abundance from us, right? We would have our abundance and give it up to the greater good. This greater good is what we would call our government. But this government that I'm talking about is real. I'm talking about a real government. I'm talking about a government where the person actually has more power than the government. And how that works is it's simple. It's called unanimous government. In fact, it's not only simple, it was in place in America longer than our system of government has been in place. Because the Iroquois Confederacy had this government. It was a unanimous government. That means that if one person disagreed, you didn't do it. It didn't mean you still couldn't do things. It just means that the government wasn't going to do it. That's all. That's all it meant. So if you want to build a bridge over the river, and everybody wants it except for that one guy that's just a total jerk, you could still have your bridge, but the government can't do it. That's all it means. So you end up with a government that's pretty lean. You end up with a government that really only acts when it really means it. Like if there's a true threat. This unanimous government returns sovereignty to where it belongs, to the only person that can hold it. A corporation can't hold sovereignty. Corporation can't own property. Corporation doesn't have an identity. A corporation is a fictitious, imaginary being. It can't hold, own, or dictate anything. It's an illusion. It's built off the trust of people. If there were no more people, you would have no more government. Government is the child of the people. But we think that we are the child of the government, and it's not. It's the other way. And the Iroquois had this system in place for 500 years. So no one gets to tell me how crazy it is or how that would never work. In fact, it would work better because each of us would become sovereign of our airspace, of our waterway, of our militia, of our honeybees, of our crops, of our family, of our cemeteries, of our churches, of our ritual fires, of everything that we wanted in our community. It would become ours. And if America's ever attacked by an imaginary force, then we would muster and defend ourselves. We would have the ability to do that. We would have the ability to act. Some of us are going to gain prana. We're going to feel pride by owning our own tank. Just like you would own a gun, somebody in Texas would own a frickin' tank. And he would drive it to work on National Militia Day, to show off. I have the tank, guys. And it's, I got a tank too. That's great. I want to make my tank bigger than yours because I really want people to know that, hey, man, I got a tank. This is great. And you end up with, and do not tell me this doesn't work. I can prove it in 2 words. Cajun Navy. Cajun Navy. Who saved Louisiana? Was it FEMA or was it the Cajun Navy? Who stepped in with more resources than anyone else had ever seen instantly, without being asked, without being called, without being signed, without being delegated, without being released? Who was just there? Cajun Navy. That is the spirit of America. That is the living soil acting on its own. It's not paid for. It's not in a uniform. It hasn't been brainwashed first. It's just simple the grass doing its thing. Percolating empathy. Percolating plasma up from the tribe. And each of us in our smaller clusters, in our smaller towns, we're going to be competing with each other for who brings the most to our powwow. You don't have to call it a powwow, but this is how it used to work. Mm-hmm. DC could be replaced with an annual powwow, a massive gathering of people. I'm talking kids, adults, all of it. If you want to participate in government, you go to the powwow. And when you go to the powwow, you bring a gift, damn it. Why? Because that's how polite people do it. You bring something. It's called a Mitbringsel in German, a little token thing that you bring. You bring something, and you get pride from bringing that. You're like, look, I brought 17 bushels of apples to the powwow. Well, how'd you do that? I got these wagons, and it's a lot of work. It's like, man, you're really impressive. It's like, yeah, I know. Worked hard all year. I wanted to bring you guys all these apples. And everybody's eating apple pie going, this is the greatest thing ever. It's like, yeah, I know. It's because that guy over there. You have a natural competition for who can do the greatest nice thing for someone else. You, instead of this tax system, see, tax is the energy of coercion. What I'm talking about is the energy of compassion. It's a completely different polarity. And it'd be more profitable for everybody. Now, we used to have this system. In fact,
now, what time period was this?
This was from 1140, roughly. I only say 1140 because there's a legend of an eclipse that was happening in the Iroquois history. So we don't really know. But basically from 1140 on, we had the Iroquois Confederacy. I urge you guys to look it up. You'll see it's the people of the Longhouse. The Iroquois is what we called them. It was 5 or 6 different nations. I think it was 5. I think actually it used to be 4. Then they added another nation, just like we would, add another state. It's the same way. The nation has no power. It's the individual, the outer nation has no power. It's the individual tribes that have all the power. Those are the ones that actually watch their land. They watch their family. They're the sovereign ones. But everyone gathers in the Longhouse. And in the Longhouse, that's when they have discussion. In fact, that's where our bicameral house system came from. It came from them. And when you look at just how sophisticated the system was, you're like, how could these be a bunch of dumb savages? Like, how does that add up with history? And then you start to realize history's all lies.
Yeah.
Christopher Columbus didn't discover America, guys. He erased it. The story of Columbus was here to erase America. It was here to tell you that it was nothing but savage, crazy. And that we came.
Does this fit in? Go ahead.
No, I'm done.
Does this fit in anywhere with the concept a lot of people are studying now about Tartaria and a lot of these really old structures that were repurposed into cathedrals or other buildings that appear to be some type of technology built into the actual structure, like free energy technology or something similar to that. And we see these buildings everywhere. Every continent has them. They're all very similar. You know, the mainstream refers to them as Greco-Roman design, but that's absolutely not what they are, because they're everywhere, including this country. And then there are maps that show big cities all over the place long before Columbus ever got here, dating back to the time period that you're talking about, like 1200. There are maps of all these different cities. And so I think that the current group of psychopaths, that the parasite class that are running things right now, they've done their best to absolutely, wipe out all knowledge of that history and that type of system, because it certainly doesn't suit them for the people to have the power. And what we see now is that we've been programmed into immorality. In other words, we've gotten away from any kind of natural law and connection with the earth and with our world, and we've got into this very unnatural synthetic AI type of concept. And the further we get into that, the less freedom we'll have. The more moral, the more I guess maybe you would say the more plasma empathetic plasma we have, the better our world will be.
Yeah. The reason why I call it plasma is not to just be cheeky. There is a power in being able to visualize something that's real that you can't see. And if you guys say the word plasma, you start to understand, the sunrise is plasma. The sunset is plasma. This is a tangible energy that's real just because I can't see it. That's exactly why I use it. It's part of our aura. This system we have. And when you connect someone through empathy, what you're really doing is utilizing a lost technology. That technology is telepathy. I know this is going to be hard to swallow, guys, but I swear to you this is true. If we did not have language, I'm talking about if you did not have words in your head, you would be communicating in a pure empathy language, a language of pure telepathic connection. Because you would see someone and your face and their face creates an asynchronous connection, a coaxial connection that you have between you. And if you look at any functional MRI, feeding the brain scan in live time, you'll see, I'm not making this up. This isn't, new age, whatever. This is real live. This is how it works. And the Tartaria stuff you're talking about, I think is even more exciting because the technology that was lost, I don't think was electricity or magnetics or anything that involved something that we can't reach yet. I think it was bone technology. There's something about the technology of our bones that is a force beyond any other force you can imagine. And if you look in all the Talmudic texts, you'll see thousands and thousands of entries of people focused like a laser beam on bones, where someone will say, we will destroy the land of Shem, and then we will go in and we will take the bones and grind them up into a powder and scatter them before we move on to Shahem. And then if you look at how many people had to die, and then the actual disgusting task of burning those skin off the bones clean enough to where then you can grind those bones up into a powder and then take that powder and purposely then lay it on top of all the cemeteries, lay it on top of all the plasma centers, any kind of megalith or monolith inside of a tribal village that was a gathering of plasma. They would take these ground up bones and cover it up. And I think that's what's causing the amnesia, Jimmy. I think that's actually the secret, because you're able to tap into your ancestors through a resonance that is only found in your bones. Your bones have a unique sonic signature. That's why you feel truth in your bones. That's why you say that. I felt it in my bones.
The expression, yeah.
That's why when you go visit your great-great-grandfather, people go visit it. It's not just for looks. you physically feel better. You're physically pulling prana up from the soil. That prana is coming up through the soil and into you, and it's invigorating you because you are an avatar of your DNA. You are the person on the totem pole that is in the front right now. You represent a totem pole that stretches back through time billions of years because it's wrapped into the fractal. You've been here always inside of your DNA blockchain. You actually have your own blockchain. It's your DNA. And you are the front runner. You are the avatar for that right now. You speak for all those people before you, but you don't even know that. You're wandering around through the forest and you don't even know that your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was running through that same forest and had a completely different transmission. They were in a completely different gear than you were. But you don't even remember because someone came and erased that. Someone came and took that away from you and said you are not that. None of that's you. You are a surname. Here's your surname. And you are a first name. Here's your first name. You are no longer from a tribe. You are no longer from a clan. This is what you are. And we end up broken through amnesia.
And it just brings to mind that the movie Avatar, because it illustrates perfectly what you're talking about. You know, a group of people who are fully connected to the earth or whatever region that they're in, however you want to call it, and fully connected to each other as well. Mm-hmm. And then you have, you know, technology can be a useful thing for us, but it's nothing compared to what we should be and what we used to be, right?
Right. Yeah, look at the I'm not saying you guys have to be literalists, but when I look in the Bible, I keep seeing stories of dudes that were really old. And it's not just the Bible. It's not. You can look in Talmudic texts, Islamic texts. You've got people that were like hundreds of years old. If you look at just how stupid we are when we die, what I mean is just how unfulfilled, our potential hasn't really been tapped into because we're dying in 70 years. It would make sense. It would make sense if you wanted your garden to not get too big. If you didn't want those pumpkins to get too big, because when you harvest them, they're too heavy. So over thousands of years, you learn to breed a pumpkin that wouldn't get so fat, that wouldn't be so intimidating, that wouldn't be so tall. And I think that's why the Smithsonian has covered up all this stuff about giants.
It's giants. Yeah,
I think that's why UNESCO, this shows you the psychopaths. This is another proof of the psychopaths. Look at what UNESCO's done to all the heritage sites across the world, guys. They've literally gone in and ransacked them and removed evidence and replaced it with propaganda. Like, no, this pyramid was built in this many years by a bunch of slaves, or these things. None of that's real, or that doesn't count, or no. Just because you found a pineapple, that doesn't mean anything. You know, hey, well, what do you mean corn? That's impossible. It's always a UNESCO, Smithsonian, Rockefeller Institute that's coming in, putting that amnesia down, because that's how afraid they are of you. I don't think you guys realize how much of a fucking badass you are. I mean, just the man is a force to be reckoned with. That's why they put you in skinny jeans. That's why they cut the end of your dick off. That's why they tell you you're toxic and ugly. That's why they keep shaming you every second, because they're afraid of you, man. They are afraid of you.
We got a couple questions I want to try and throw at you there, James, real quick. I love this conversation. This is great stuff. Here's a question from Aura. She says, if we have limited prana tokens, is it better to invest it to your own ego's improvement or to try and help others with it?
All prana is an asynchronous connection, which means that there is no such thing as a transaction the way you would see money. If you're going to give someone prana, you're going to get prana from them. A prana is... imagine that you were to walk into the world of tuning forks, all the tuning forks you could possibly imagine in one store, okay? And 17 of those tuning forks are in the key of A. If you were to strike one tuning fork that was in the key of A, all the other tuning forks in the key of A would vibrate. Their vibration is not going to make your tuning fork vibrate less, is it? It's not. nor is their striking. If you start up vibrating as a result of that oscillation, you're not going to take away the vibration of them. This entraining, this idea that through resonance, you build an oscillation through resonance, it's free energy. The technology of free energy is the technology of vibration. The universe is the frequency, vibration, oscillation. It's energy, frequency, vibration. If you're a Tesla fan, but I like the word oscillation because it's all about that rate. It's all about that transmission gear that you're in. So you need to understand that your prana is not a finite resource. If you go to a spot where you're with a bunch of other A tuning forks, you're going to naturally vibrate 24 hours a day, and you're not taxing anybody. You're not taxing anyone there. The only way you'd be taxing
you're just resonating.
Yeah. The only way you would tax them on the island of A tuning forks is if you were in A sharp, because you would start to entrain
or A flat. Yeah.
But keep in mind, it would have to be right on the sharp of the flat. In other words, if it was a C or a D, it wouldn't work. This is how the two towers work. To entrain is the art of pacing. You guys might have heard that term in hypnosis. That's why hypnosis works through pacing. You match the person's pace, and then you speed them up or slow them down depending on what you want to do.
Okay, another quick question. Can you speak to the practice of embalming people? Is this some way to perpetuate ancestral amnesia as well? And this is from Eli.
The Egyptians didn't care about the brain. They would pull your brain out of your nose and throw it away. It meant nothing to them. The brain is a router. It would be like you pretending that the internet is inside the router. So you're going to take the router and hoard it and be like, I have the internet. Ha! It's the same thing. That's what your brain is. But we're told that everything's in the brain. The Egyptians purposely pulled out your organs. Your organs are a RAID drive. I'm sorry, you guys don't know that. A RAID drive is a multi-hard drive backup system. It means if you lose one hard drive, it's still okay. You've got these other hard drives, but each of them is meant to store a different thing. That's why a heart transplant recipient will wake up with a different flavor, a different ethics, a different memory, and a different, really a lot of things.
Sure.
All those organs were kept in separate jars for 70 days by the Egyptians. To answer the question, it is my theory, and this is only a theory, that because they're still preserved, you have a living hoard of memory that's there. And if you were to be reborn in the same bones, again, this is the same DNA line, that resonance maybe could somehow pick up that memory, and then therefore you wouldn't have to relearn all that epigenetic wisdom. It would basically be there waiting in a hard drive for you. You could only pick it up, though, because of your resonance, because your DNA matches those organs. You're able to kind of download or uplink into those memories and pull that stuff down.
All right, James, this is such a fascinating conversation. I'm so glad that you were sharing with us today. We've only got a couple of minutes left, maybe a minute and a half or so. Tell people where they can find you, possibly correspond with you, and find your work.
I am on YouTube. I just started a YouTube channel. Give me a shout there. Just do a search for James True. I have a website. It's www.jtrue.com. I write a free column there. My books are available there. I have a tribe of other people. We are actively working to fix what's happening right now. We have a solution in mind. It involves a campground. This campground is a training center for Wetiko. It is to fix Wetiko. I'd like for people to check it out and see what they think about it.
All right. Thank you so much, James. We really appreciate it. You've been listening to Inside the Matrix. Join us again next week if you can. And everybody hang in there. We love you all.
This is Inside the Matrix, hosted by Jimmy Brent.
Who are we talking about?
Jimmy Brent. Live every Sunday, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
It is worldwide.
Broadcasting from an undisclosed location deep within the neon capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. For more information on the host and the show, please visit InsideTheMatrix.org. That's InsideTheMatrix.org. It's time to break the chains of manipulated consciousness and claim our true nature as creative, divine beings. Inside the Matrix. Inside the Matrix. The Matrix. The Matrix. The Matrix.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.